The shuttle doors opened and Kira Vasquez stepped onto Station Velar 7 for the first time. She was 17 years old, with dark hair tied back in a practical knot and brown eyes that took in everything around her. She wore the gray uniform of the Conclave Academy, though it fit her strangely. The tailors had never made clothes for a human before. The moment her feet touched the station floor, she felt wrong, light, like she might float away if she moved too fast. The gravity here was set to 0.4 grams, which meant everything weighed less than half of what it should. On Earth, Kira weighed 62 kilograms. Here, she weighed about 25. Her body did not know what to do with this information. She was the first human ever admitted to the Conclave Academy. This was supposed to be an honor. Her government had worked for 3 years to secure her a place here. Diplomats had argued. Treaties had been signed. And now here she was, a representative of her entire species, feeling like she might accidentally jump through the ceiling. The station was beautiful in a cold way. Everything was smooth and white and curved. The walls seemed to glow from within. Holographic signs floated in the air, displaying words in dozens of languages. Her translator implant buzzed softly behind her ear, turning the alien text into English. Welcome to Conclave Academy. Excellence through unity. Kira walked toward the orientation hall, being very careful with each step. She had trained for low gravity on the trip here, but training was different from living it. Every movement felt too big, too easy. Her muscles wanted to push harder than they needed to. The other students were already gathered in the hall. Kira stopped at the entrance and stared. She had seen aliens before, of course. Earth had been part of the galactic community for 20 years now. But she had never seen so many different species in one place. There were Valorians with their tall, thin bodies and skin that glowed with soft light. There were Kreth with hard shells covering their bodies like armor made of dark blue stone. There were Shandari, who stood almost 3 meters tall on legs that looked like they were made of glass. There were species Kira did not recognize at all. And every single one of them was staring at her. The whispers started immediately. Kira's translator picked up fragments of conversation from across the room. Is that the human? Look at how dense she is. You can see the muscle mass from here. I heard their planet has actual predators. Large ones. Disgusting. How did they even achieve space travel? Kira kept her face calm and walked toward the seating area. She had been warned about this. Humans had a reputation in the galaxy, and it was not a good one. Earth was classified as a Category 9 death world, which meant it was considered one of the most dangerous planets capable of producing intelligent life. The gravity was crushing. The weather was violent. The other animals wanted to eat you. By galactic standards, the fact that humans existed at all was almost offensive. A Valorian stepped into her path before she could reach her seat. He was tall and slender, with skin that shifted between pale blue and white. Glowing patterns moved across his face like living tattoos. His eyes were large and completely black, without any white at all. So you are the Deathworlder, he said. His voice was musical, but his tone was not friendly. I am Thiessen. My father sits on the Trade Council. He voted against allowing your kind into the Academy. Nice to meet you, Kira said. I am Kira. Thiessen tilted his head like a bird, examining something strange. Is it true that your species still has bones? Actual solid calcium structures inside your body? Yes. The students close enough to hear made sounds of disgust and horror. A Shandari actually stepped backward, as if Kira might be contagious. Bones, Thiessen repeated, like the word itself was funny. And I heard your muscles are attached directly to these bones. That you use them to move. That is how it works, yes. How do you not tear yourselves apart? Thiessen's patterns pulsed with amusement. All that tension, all that force, contained inside soft flesh. It sounds like a design flaw. Kira had promised herself she would stay calm. She had promised her parents, her government, her entire species. She was an ambassador here, whether she wanted to be or not. Everything she did would reflect on Earth. "We manage," she said. Thiessen laughed. It was a pretty sound, like bells ringing. "I am sure you do. Tell me, Deathworlder, what is the gravity on your planet?" "I have heard different numbers. About 1G, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, depending on where you are." The hall went quiet. Kira saw several students checking their personal devices, probably converting the measurement. Then the reaction started. "That is 2.5 times station standard," someone said. "How do they even stand up?" "Their hearts must be incredibly powerful. The blood pressure alone." Thiessen had stopped laughing. He was looking at Kira differently now, with something that might have been fear hiding behind his contempt. "You are telling me that you have lived your entire life under that kind of force? Every moment of every day?" "Yes. And you can function here? In proper gravity?" Kira thought about how hard it was to not jump when she walked. How her body kept expecting weight that was not there. How she had to consciously hold herself down. "I am adapting," she said. Thiessen's glow flickered. He looked her up and down, taking in her compact body, her visible muscles, the way she stood balanced on her feet, like she was ready to move in any direction. "Adapt quickly," he said. "This is not your death planet. Human. Here, you will have to be civilized." He walked away. His friends followed him, their whispers mixing with laughter. Kira found her assigned seat and sat down carefully. The chair was designed for lighter bodies, and it creaked under her weight. She felt eyes on her from every direction. She heard the word Deathworlder repeated again and again, always in the same tone. Like she was a disease. Like she was something that should not exist. She thought about home. About blue skies and green trees and the weight of real air in her lungs. About running through grass and swimming in oceans and feeling the honest pull of a world that loved her even as it tried to kill her. She was very far from home. Now that the orientation began. A holographic figure appeared at the front of the hall and started explaining the rules of the academy. Kira listened carefully and took notes on her device. She would be the best student here. She would prove that humans deserved their place among the stars. But sitting there in that two-light chair, surrounded by beautiful aliens who looked at her like she was a monster, Kira Vasquez had never felt so heavy in her life. Kira worked. There was no other word for it. What she did in that observation deck for the next 23 minutes was not heroism or bravery or any of the other words people would use later. It was work. Hard. Painful, necessary work. She started with the students closest to death. A Shandari whose broken legs had torn open, spilling pale blood across the floor. Kira grabbed the emergency medical kit from the wall and knelt beside the alien, her hands steady even as her heart pounded. She had taken first aid courses on Earth. She knew how to stop bleeding, how to stabilize injuries, how to keep someone alive until real help arrived. But she had never done it on an alien before. The Shandari's anatomy was different. Their blood was thinner, almost like water. Their skin was not skin at all, but a kind of flexible crystal that cracked instead of cut. Kira had to guess, had to improvise, had to use bandages in ways they were never designed to be used. She wrapped the broken legs as best she could, applied pressure to the worst wounds, and hoped it would be enough. Then she picked up the Shandari and carried them to the safe zone near the door. The alien was tall, almost 3 meters, but under Earth gravity, they weighed maybe 50 kilograms. On Earth, Kira had carried heavier things for fun. Here, with her muscles weakened by weeks of low gravity, it felt like carrying a mountain. Her back screamed at her. Her legs shook. But she made it. She set the Shandari down next to Chitter and went back. Again, And again. And again, she found a system. Move through the room, identify who was in the most danger, stabilize them if possible, carry them to safety. The observation deck was large, and the gravity made everything harder. But Kira had something the other students did not have. She had spent her entire life training for this. Not training like exercise. Training like existence. Every day on Earth, she had carried the weight of her own world on her shoulders. Every step she had ever taken had been a fight against gravity. Her bones were dense. Her muscles were strong. Her heart could pump blood, uphill against a force that would have killed any other species in the room. She was a Deathworlder. And for the first time in her life, she understood what that really meant. A Valorian student was trapped under a piece of equipment that had fallen from the ceiling. The equipment was heavy, maybe 80 kilograms, and it was pressing down on the student's chest. Their bioluminescent patterns were fading, their breath coming in short, desperate gasps. Kira grabbed the equipment and lifted. Her arms burned. Her vision went dark at the edges. She felt something pop in her shoulder, a muscle tearing or a joint shifting. She did not know which. But she lifted. She held the equipment up long enough to drag the Valorian out from under it. Then she let it drop and fell to her knees, gasping. Blood dripped from her nose. A blood vessel had burst somewhere, unable to handle the pressure. On Earth, this would have been nothing. Here, after weeks of her body adjusting to lower pressure, it felt like her head was going to explode. She wiped the blood away and kept working. Thiessen was near the windows. He was still alive, but barely. His body was pressed against the floor like the gravity itself was trying to push him through it. His glowing patterns had gone almost completely dark. Just faint flickers that might have been his heart still trying to beat. Kira knelt beside him. Up close, she could see the fear in his black eyes. He was looking at her, really looking at her, maybe for the first time since they had met. "Please," he whispered. The word came out broken, barely audible. "I cannot breathe." "I know," Kira said. "I am going to help you." She slid her arms under his body and lifted him. He weighed almost nothing, even under Earth gravity. His species was built for lightness, for grace, for a universe where weight was something that could be adjusted with a dial. He was not built for this. None of them were. Kira carried Thiessen to the safe zone and set him down with the others. There were 12 students there now, arranged in a rough circle, some conscious and some not. Chitter was moving among them, doing what they could with their damaged body, checking pulses and adjusting bandages. "How many more?" Chitter asked. Kira looked back at the observation deck. 28. Maybe more. You cannot carry 28 more people. Watch me. She went back. Time became strange. Kira stopped counting minutes and started counting bodies. 13. 14. 4 muscles stopped burning and started going numb, which she knew was a bad sign but could not afford to think about. Her nose kept bleeding. Her vision kept going dark. She ignored it all. Somewhere around student number 18, she found a Kreth who was still conscious. Their shell had cracked badly, but they could move their arms. "Can you help?" Kira asked. The Kreth stared at her. "How are you still standing?" "I am from Earth. We do not fall down easily." She helped the Kreth to their feet. "Lean on me. We need to get to the door." Together, they made it. The Kreth collapsed next to Chitter, but they were alive. That was what mattered. Student 19 was dead. Kira checked the pulse twice to be sure, then moved on. There was nothing she could do for the dead. She could only help the living. Student 20 was a small Valorian, barely more than a child. They were crying without sound, their bodies shaking, their patterns flashing in distress. Kira picked them up and held them close. "It is okay," she said. "I have you. You're going to be okay." The young Valorian pressed their face against her chest and shook. Kira carried them to safety and went back. 20-1, 22, 20-3. Her shoulder was definitely torn now. She could feel the muscle grinding against itself every time she lifted her arm. Her back had locked up somewhere around student 20, and now she was moving through pure stubbornness. 20-4, 20-5. The station shook. The lights flickered. And suddenly, Leslie, the weight disappeared. The gravity had reset. The repair teams had finally fixed the array, or at least switched to a different backup system. The crushing pressure lifted from Kira's body, and she almost collapsed from the sheer relief of it. But she did not collapse. She had 3 more students to move. She carried them one by one to the safe zone, even though they probably could have crawled now. She was not going to leave anyone behind. Not when she had come this far. When she finally sat down against the wall, her body was shaking so badly she could barely control it. Her nose was still bleeding. Her shoulder was on fire. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else. But around her, 14 students who would have died were still alive. Chito crawled over and sat beside her. They did not say anything. They just pressed their hard shell against her arm and stayed there. Medical teams arrived 7 minutes later. They burst through the doors with floating stretchers and emergency equipment, ready for a disaster. What they found was Kira Vasquez, covered in blood that was mostly not her own, surrounded by injured students she had carried to safety one by one. The head medic stopped and stared at her. "You did this?" they asked. "Alone?" Kira tried to speak, but her voice was not working properly. She nodded instead. "Under Earth gravity?" Another nod. The medic looked at the students arranged around her. 25 saved out of 40. 11 who had died before she could reach them. 4 who had been outside the room when the gravity shifted. "That is impossible," the medic said. Kira finally found her voice. It came out rough and broken. "On Earth," she said. "We call it Tuesday." Then she closed her eyes and let the darkness take her. The day everything changed started like any other day at Conclave Academy. Kira woke up, exercised in her room, ate breakfast alone in the cafeteria, and went to her morning classes. She took notes. She answered questions when teachers called on her. She ignored the whispers and the stares and the word gravity ape, muttered just loud enough for her to hear by afternoon. She was in the observation deck with about 40 other students. The observation deck was a large room with windows that curved along one entire wall, showing the stars and the distant glow of a nearby nebula. It was beautiful in a cold way, like most things on the station. The students were there for an astronomy lesson. A holographic display floated in the center of the room, showing the local star systems and the trade routes that connected them. The teacher was a Valorian named Professor Salith, who spoke in a soft voice and rarely looked directly at Kira. The Conclave controls trade in this sector through a network of relay stations, Professor Salith was explaining. Each station must maintain precise conditions for the species that use it. Gravity, atmosphere, temperature. Any failure in these systems could be catastrophic. As if the universe had been waiting for exactly this moment, the station shook. It was not a big shake. More like a shiver, a tremor that passed through the floor and walls and disappeared. But it was enough to make everyone stop talking. Enough to make Professor Salith pause mid-sentence and look up at the ceiling with wide, worried eyes. "That was unusual," she said. The lights flickered. Then the alarms started. They were loud and sharp, designed to cut through any conversation and demand attention. Red emergency lights began to pulse along the edges of the walls. A voice spoke over the station's communication system, calm but urgent. "Attention all personnel. A microasteroid has struck the gravity generation array. Repair teams have been dispatched. Please remain calm and stay in your current locations. Emergency protocols are now in effect. The students looked at each other nervously. Some of them pulled out personal devices trying to contact family or access news feeds. Professor Salith raised her hands, trying to restore order. Everyone please stay calm. Microasteroid strikes are rare but not unheard of. The station has multiple redundant systems. There is no need to panic. Kira sat very still in her chair. She did not feel panic. She felt something else, something she could not name. A tightness in her stomach. A sense that something bad was about to happen. The station shook again. This time, it was harder. A jolt that knocked several students off their feet. The holographic display flickered and died. The emergency lights pulsed faster. The gravity array has suffered critical damage, the voice announced. Backup systems are engaging. Please remain calm. And then the gravity changed. Kira felt it instantly. Her body, which had spent 6 weeks adapting to the wrongness of low gravity, suddenly felt right. Her weight was back. Her muscles stopped feeling like they were floating. The constant sensation of being about to drift away disappeared. She knew what this meant before her brain had time to form the words Earth gravity. The backup system had defaulted to Earth's standard gravity. The screaming started immediately. All around her, students collapsed. It happened so fast that Kira barely had time to understand what she was seeing. The Valorians fell first, their tall bodies folding like paper under a weight they had never been designed to carry. Their bioluminescent patterns flashed wildly, signals of distress and pain. The Shandari were worse. Their beautiful glass-like legs simply shattered, splintering into pieces as they tried to stand. The sound was horrible, like ice cracking, mixed with screams that did not sound like any voice Kira had ever heard. Professor Salith hit the floor and did not move. Her body was too light, her bones too thin. Her internal organs pressed against each other in ways that were never supposed to happen. The crest held up better. Their shells were strong, but even they were struggling, their legs shaking as they tried to support body weight that had more than doubled in an instant. Kira stood up. Her legs ached. Her muscles burned. 6 weeks of low gravity had weakened her more than she realized. But she could stand. She could move. She could breathe. She was the only one. The observation deck had become a nightmare. 40 students lay on the floor in various states of collapse. Some were crying. Some were screaming. Some were completely silent, and Kira did not want to think about what that meant. The windows still showed the beautiful nebula outside, calm and distant, completely uncaring about the suffering happening beneath them. "Help," someone whispered. "Please help." It was Chitter. The small Krath was on the floor near the windows. Their damaged shell cracked in new places, their legs twisted at wrong angles. But they were alive. They were looking at Kira with eyes full of pain and something else. Hope. "Kira," Chitter said, "you can move. You have to help." Kira looked around the room. The emergency exit was on the far side, at least 30 meters away. The communication panel was near the door. If she could reach it, she could call for help, could tell the repair teams that students were dying up here. But to get there, she would have to walk. And walking meant leaving people behind. "I do not know if I can," she said. Her voice came out strange, thick with the pressure of real gravity on her chest. "I have not felt this weight in weeks. My body is not ready." "Your body was built for this," Chitter said. "Your entire species was built for this. Please, Kira, you are the only one who can." The station shook again. Somewhere in the distance, metal groaned and something crashed. The repair teams were still trying to fix the array, but Kira did not know how long that would take. Minutes? Hours? How long could these students survive under Earth gravity? She looked at the bodies on the floor. She saw Thiessen among them, his glowing patterns flickering weakly, his chest barely moving. He had called her a monster. He had made her life miserable for 6 weeks. But he was dying now, crushed by the same gravity that had made her strong. Kira made a decision. She bent down and picked up Chitter. The creth was heavier than she expected, but still light compared to what Kira was used to carrying on Earth. She cradled Chitter against her chest and started walking toward the emergency exit. Every step was hard, not because of Chitter's weight, but because the floor panels were not designed for Earth's standard force. They buckled and cracked under her feet. She had to be careful, had to find the strongest paths, had to move slowly when every instinct screamed at her to run. She reached the communication panel and pressed the emergency button. "This is the observation deck," she said. 40 students are down. Repeat, 40 students are down. The Earth's standard gravity is killing them. We need medical teams now." Static. Then a voice, panicked and distant. "We know. We are trying to fix it. Repair teams are overwhelmed. Medical is responding, but it will take time. How much time? We do not know. 20 minutes. Maybe 30. Kira looked back at the room full of broken students. 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, half of them would be dead. She set Chitter down gently near the door, in a spot where the floor seemed stable. "What are you doing?" Chitter asked. "What I have to," Kira said. And she walked back into the room. 6 weeks passed at Conclave Academy. Kira learned many things during this time, but the most important lesson was this. Being hated was exhausting. Every morning, she woke up in her small room and looked at the ceiling for a few minutes before getting out of bed. The bed was too soft. The gravity was too light. Her body still expected to feel the pull of Earth, and every day it was disappointed. She had started doing exercises in her room, push-ups and squats and planks, just to feel some kind of resistance. Just to feel something. Her classes were difficult, but not because the material was hard. Kira was smart. She had always been smart. The difficulty came from the way teachers spoke to her, slowly and carefully, like she was a small child who might not understand big words. It came from the way other students moved away when she sat down, as if her presence might somehow hurt them. In xenobiology class, the teacher spent an entire week discussing Earth. Kira sat in the back and listened as her home was described like a horror story. "The planet has active tectonic plates," the teacher explained to the class. "This means the ground itself moves and shakes. Earthquakes can destroy entire cities. Volcanoes can erupt without warning, covering the land in molten rock." The students made sounds of disbelief and disgust. "The weather systems are equally violent. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods. The planet's axial tilt creates seasons, which means the temperature changes dramatically throughout the year. Some areas of Earth experience temperature swings of over 50 degrees between summer and winter. How does anything survive?" A Shandari student asked. "That is the remarkable thing," the teacher said. "Life on Earth is incredibly adaptable. It has to be. The planet is constantly trying to kill everything on it. The species that survive are the ones that can endure the most punishment." The teacher looked at Kira when she said this. Everyone looked at Kira. "Humans are perhaps the most successful predators Earth has ever produced," the teacher continued. "They can eat almost anything. They can survive in almost any climate. They can run for hours without stopping, chasing prey until it collapses from exhaustion. This is called persistence hunting, and it is one of the most terrifying hunting strategies in the known galaxy." Kira kept her face blank. She had never hunted anything in her life. She bought her food from stores like everyone else on modern Earth, but she knew that nothing she said would change how these aliens saw her. To them, she would always be a predator from a death planet, a monster wearing a student uniform. After class, Thiessen found her in the hallway. Persistence hunting, he said, falling into step beside her. His friends followed, forming a loose circle around her as she walked. That means you just keep chasing something until it dies of fear and exhaustion. That is how your species hunted. A long time ago, Kira said. We do not do that anymore, but you could. Thiesen's glow pulsed with something that looked like excitement. If you wanted to, you could chase any of us until we collapsed. Our bodies are not designed for that kind of endurance. We would simply give out. Kira stopped walking. The circle of students stopped with her. I am not going to chase anyone, she said. I am here to learn. That is all. Of course you are. Thiesen smiled, showing teeth that were small and flat and completely non-threatening. The gravity ape wants to learn. How civilized. His friends laughed. Gravity ape. It was the name they had given her, and it had spread through the entire academy. Kira heard it whispered in hallways, saw it written on her locker, found it tagged on her school files. Gravity ape. Deathworlder. Monster. She walked away without responding. She had learned that responding only made things worse. Physical education was the hardest class. Not because of the exercises, but because of what happened when she tried to participate. On her first day, the teacher had asked her to catch a ball thrown by another student. It was a simple test of reflexes. Kira caught the ball easily. She also accidentally broke 3 of the Shandari students' finger bones. She had not meant to grip so hard. On Earth, that grip would have been gentle. But here, in low gravity, with her muscles built for a world that pressed down on everything with cruel force, gentle was different. The Shandari had screamed. The teacher had rushed over. Kira had stood there holding the ball, watching the blood seep through the alien's cracked glass-like skin, feeling like a monster because that is what everyone already believed she was. After that, she was banned from physical activities with other students. She exercised alone, in a special room with equipment designed to handle her strength. The school called it an accommodation. Kira called it a prison, but not everyone treated her like a disease. There was a Kreth, student named Chitter, who sometimes sat near her in the library. Chitter was small for their species, with a damaged shell that had healed wrong after some childhood injury. The damage made them walk with a limp, and it seemed to make them an outcast among the other Kreth. One evening, Chitter approached her table and sat down without asking. You are not what they say, Chitter said. Their voice was clicking and strange, even through the translator. Kira looked up from her studies. What did they say? That you are violent, dangerous, that you could kill any of us without trying. Chitter's small eyes studied her. But I watch you. You move so carefully, like you are afraid of breaking everything around you. Kira was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I am afraid of that. Every day. Why? Because I could. Kira set down her tablet. These walls, these chairs, most of the students here. I could break them without meaning to. My body does not understand that it is not on Earth anymore. It still thinks it needs to be strong enough to survive a world that is constantly trying to kill it. Chitter was quiet, processing this. So you hold back, Chitter said finally. All the time. Every moment. Yes, that sounds exhausting. Kira almost laughed. It is. Chitter reached out and touched her hand very gently. Their shell was hard and cool against her skin. I think that is the opposite of dangerous. I think that is something else entirely. What? I do not know the word in your language. Chitter pulled their hand back. But in mine, it means someone who is strong enough to be gentle. It is a compliment. Kira felt something warm in her chest. It was small, but it was there. In 6 weeks of loneliness and contempt, this small Kreth with the broken shell had given her the first moment of genuine kindness. Thank you, she said. Chitter made a clicking sound that might have been a smile. Thank me by helping me with this mathematics homework. I do not understand integrals. Kira laughed for real this time. I can do that. They worked together until the library closed. And for a few hours, Kira did not feel like a monster. She felt like a student. She felt almost normal. But outside the library windows, the stars turned slowly in the black void of space. Earth was out there somewhere, blue and green, and terribly far away. And Kira knew that no matter how long she stayed at this academy, no matter how many friends she made, she would never truly belong here. That she was made of different stuff, heavier stuff, and the galaxy would never let her forget it. Kira woke up in the medical bay 3 days later. The first thing she saw was white ceiling. The second thing she saw was Chitter, sitting in a chair beside her bed, watching her with their small dark eyes. "You are awake," Chitter said. "Good. I was starting to worry." Kira tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her shoulders screamed at her. Her back felt like someone had replaced her spine with broken glass. Her entire body was wrapped in bandages and covered in patches that were slowly pumping medicine into her blood. "What happened?" she asked. Her voice sounded like sandpaper. "You passed out after the rescue. The medics brought you here. They've been treating you for muscle damage, internal bleeding, and something called stress fractures." Chitter made a clicking sound that might have been concern. "Apparently, your bones actually cracked from the pressure." "Your own bones?" The medics said they have never seen anything like it. Kira lay back down and stared at the ceiling. Stress fractures. Of course. Her body had been weakened by low gravity, and then she had forced it to perform at Earth levels. The result was damage that would take weeks to heal. How many? She asked. Chitter knew what she meant. 14 survived because of you. The medics said that without your intervention, at least 12 of them would have died before help arrived. 14. Kira remembered carrying 25 students. But some of them had already been beyond saving. Some of them she had moved knowing it was probably too late. And the others? 11 dead. The station is in mourning. Chitter paused. But it would have been much worse. Everyone knows that. Kira closed her eyes. 11 dead. 11 students who had families, who had futures, who had come to this academy expecting to learn and grow and become something more. Gone now. Crushed by gravity that she had carried her entire life without thinking. "It is not your fault," Chitter said, reading her expression. "You did not cause the accident. You did not design the backup system. You just happened to be there, and you did everything you could." "I know." Kira opened her eyes again. "But that does not make it easier." A week passed. Kira healed slowly, her body working to repair damage that most species would never have survived in the first place. The medics checked on her constantly, fascinated by her biology, by the way her muscles rebuilt themselves, by the density of her bones even in their cracked state. "Your species is remarkable," one medic told her. "We knew humans were resilient, but this is beyond anything in our medical databases. You should not be alive right now. The stress you put on your body would have killed any other species in the conclave." "We're stubborn," Kira said. "It is a survival trait." When she was finally released from the medical bay, she found the academy transformed. The hallways were quieter. Students spoke in soft voices. Memorials had been set up for the 11 who had died. Holographic images and flowers and offerings from a dozen different cultures. But something else had changed too. The way people looked at Kira was different. Before the accident, they had looked at her with contempt, fear, disgust. Deathworlder, gravity ape, monster. Now they looked at her with something else entirely. Something that might have been respect. Something that might have been awe. Is that her? She heard students whisper as she passed. The human who carried everyone to safety. I heard she was lifting students while her own bones were breaking. My friend was in that room. She says the human never stopped. Not once. Even when she was bleeding. Kira did not know how to feel about this. She had not done what she did for respect or fame. She had done it because people were dying, and she was the only one who could help. It was not complicated. It was not heroic. It was just what needed to be done. The ceremony happened 2 weeks after the accident. The entire academy gathered in the main auditorium, a space large enough to hold 1,000 students and faculty. Kira stood at the front, wearing a formal uniform that actually fit this time, because someone had taken the trouble to make one properly for a human body. The station administrator spoke first, then the academy director, then representatives from several governments whose citizens had been among the survivors. They used words like brave and heroic and remarkable. They talked about the importance of unity across species, about how the tragedy had shown that the conclave was stronger than any accident. Kira barely heard any of it. Her eyes were on the crowd, scanning the faces of students she had carried. Students who had watched her work, students who had called her monster just weeks ago. Finally, they called her forward to receive the Conclave Medal of Valor. It was the highest honor the station could give. A small disc of precious metal that supposedly represented the unity of all species. Kira accepted it and stepped to the podium to speak. She had not prepared anything. She did not know what to say, so she just started talking. "I am not a hero," she said. "I am just a human. On my planet, we live under gravity that would crush anyone in this room. We grow up learning to carry weight. It is not special to us. It is just life." She paused, looking at the crowd. "When the gravity changed, I did not think about being brave. I thought about my friends and classmates dying on the floor. I thought about how I could help. And then I did. That is all." She looked down at the medal in her hand. "I cannot bring back the 11 we lost. I wish I could. But I can promise you this. As long as I am here, as long as I am able to stand and walk and carry, I will help anyone who needs it. Not because I am a Deathworlder, not because I am strong, but because that is what people do. That is what we should all do." She stepped back from the podium. The auditorium was silent. Then, slowly, applause began. It grew and grew until the entire room was filled with the sound. After the ceremony, Deason found her. He was using a mobility frame, his body still recovering from injuries that would have killed him without medical intervention. His bioluminescent patterns were dim but steady. "I owe you my life," he said. His voice was different now, quieter, humbler. "You do not owe me anything," Kira said, double quotes. "Yes, I do." He stepped closer, moving carefully in his frame. "I called you primitive. I laughed at your bones, your muscles, your world. I thought being from a death world made you less than us. I was wrong." Kira waited. "Your world did not fail to kill your species," Deason continued. "It trained you. Every day of your existence, it made you stronger, more resilient, more capable. When everything fell apart, when the gravity turned against us, you were the only one prepared." He held out his hand. The same gesture Kira had once offered to Chitter in the library. "I would like to start over," he said. "If you will allow it, I would like to learn what Earth teaches its people. How to carry weight. How to endure." Kira looked at his hand for a long moment. This was the alien who had made her life miserable, who had led the mockery and the contempt, who had called her Gravity Ape. But he was also the alien she had carried to safety, while her own bones were cracking. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cool and fragile against her palm, so delicate she could feel his pulse through his skin. "We call it resilience," she said, "and it starts with standing up. Every time you fall down, you stand up again. That is the first lesson. Sazan's patterns flickered with something that might have been a smile. Then perhaps you could teach me? Chitter appeared beside them, their shell almost fully healed now. Their damaged leg repaired with technology that would have seemed like magic on Earth. Teach both of us, Chitter said. Teach anyone who wants to learn. Kira looked at her two friends, one old and one new. She looked at the metal in her hand. She looked out the windows at the stars, somewhere among which her blue and green home was spinning through space, forging new generations in its endless, crushing, loving embrace. She smiled. Okay, she said. But I warn you, the first lesson is push-ups, and I do not accept excuses. Chitter made a sound that was definitely a laugh. Thesen's patterns brightened with surprise. And Kira Vasquez, the gravity ape, the Deathworlder, the first human at Conclave Academy, felt something she had not felt since leaving Earth. She felt like she belonged. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the small moment of connection happening below. But Kira did not need the stars to care. She had found something better. She had found her place among them.